Now, I want to start this video off by saying that it is not intended in any way, shape, or form to come across as hatred towards any one artist. You know, there's been this interesting thing covering the Kendrick-Drake beef where if you gave credit to one rapper, people would call you a hater of the other rapper. Or if you didn't pick a side, people would also call you a hater. But in the grand scheme of things, sometimes you gotta call a spade, and giving criticism oftentimes is not hate. So Ice Spice, if you're watching this, well, first and foremost, I'm in love with you, but really most importantly, I hope you take some valuable lessons out of this video when your new album inevitably flops. And again, I apologize, but this is not hatred. We are going to break down all of the objective factors within Ice Spice's career, which will inevitably lead to this new album she just released not succeeding the way she probably hoped or expected it would. Before we do that, I'm just going to give my projection of what this album is going to sell in the first week. Judging by all the factors we're about to touch on in this video, I don't see Ice Spice selling more than 50,000 copies within the first week of this album being released. And if I was a betting man, I would put my money on it being closer to the 20 to 30,000 copy range. And again, this is not hate, but sometimes you could tell when an artist is objectively headed in the wrong direction, making the wrong moves and not innovating their style or sound enough to the point where they could keep the interest of the general public. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now with Ice Spice. She had a monstrous run between late 2022 and 2023, hitting a peak of around 40 million listeners on Spotify, spawning multiple top 10 Billboard charting hits and going gold with her first mixtape. And I could be wrong, but I think she's the only rapper other than Kendrick Lamar to ever collaborate with Taylor Swift. So yeah, basically Ice Spice was on Kendrick Lamar's level, pretty much. Now, you might not think she's as good as Kendrick Lamar, but there's no denying that she broke a lot of boundaries between 2022 and 2023, which we'll touch on later in this video. However, things started looking dark for her in 2024, and let's try to take a step back and think, what do we remember Ice Spice for within this last year? I mean, she dropped some forgettable singles. She started maybe dating Central Cee. Maybe it's a gimmick. We're going to touch on that here in a couple minutes, but it's been nothing but drama and mid-music for Ice Spice in the last 12 months. And you could see that very clearly by her monthly listeners. Again, she went from 40 million monthly listeners on Spotify in 2023 to now less than 17 million monthly listeners just 12 months later. And drops like that could happen very frequently if the artist in question is featured on some massive records, but then those records kind of fizzle out. So it's like all of those monthly listeners that you had who were mainly just tuned in for those, one or two big hits. Now that people got sick of those hits, it makes sense that your monthly listeners starts to decrease. But she lost more than half of her monthly listeners in less than a year. That's a big drop. That's like if you were making $10,000 a month and your boss just told you that now you're only going to make $4,000 a month. How are you going to afford Spotify Premium to listen to Ice Spice if your boss is cutting your check like that? Anyways, massive drop from 2023. But we have to remember, back in 2023, Ice Spice's sound was fresh. Her producer Riot, who produces basically every record by her, had this unique approach of sampling classic records while incorporating elements of trap music, drill music, and Jersey club music. And Ice Spice would come in with this energetic, bouncy flow. She'd give off these cartoony one-liners like grab on my da-da-da. Yeah, I know, she really changed the game with bars like that. But yeah, and what really separated her initially from the other crop of female rappers that were popular at the time was that she was super likable. She was showing love to all the other females in the game, working with Nicki Minaj, PinkPantheress, Taylor Swift. It was her collaborations with female artists that became her biggest hits, and with each link up with a new female artist, Ice Spice's popularity seemed to rise more and more with each new collaboration that we got. Now, regardless of how you felt about her music, she was objectively bringing something new to the game, and she was like hip-hop's sweetheart. Women loved her because she was confident, she stayed out of drama, and she aligned herself with some of the biggest female artists in the game. And men loved her because they wanted to eat it for lunch. But with each boundary she broke back in 2023, she managed to break any stride she made by 2024. Her and her producer Riot introduced a new sound to the game in 2023, but by 2024, they had beaten it to death with every record sounding the same. Same flows, same beat pattern, same subject matter, same delivery. There was no innovation. I mean, she just put out a 10-track album and basically every single song sounds the same. And when it doesn't, for example, the intro song Fat Butt sounds like she's trying to take a different approach, but is completely ripping off old Nicki Minaj flows that Nicki has been using for the last 10 years, just doing a worse version of them. And I mean, I can't really touch on the subject matter, right? Because YouTube will flag me due to the vulgarity of what Ice Spice has talked about in this album. But all jokes aside, there's been no evolution or self-reflection at all, which, isn't what you go to Ice Spice for. But considering you had one of the fastest come-ups in hip-hop in recent memory, you'd think she'd have at least just a bit to touch on in this album. But anyways, never held her to a high standard lyrically, so not going to touch on the lack of intriguing subject matter matter on this album. Instead, let's focus on what I think is the real root behind her demise, which is again that she came in the game as this kind of lovable character. But over time, she's managed to find herself in multiple beefs. First, when she clicked up with Nicki Minaj, people thought she was beefing with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. Then she had a somewhat direct beef with Latto, where the two sent a couple subliminals at each other. Not really going to go too deep on it, but if you want to know what they were beefing about, in a nutshell, Ice Spice has this signature pose where she puts her hand in between her legs, and Latto was caught doing the same thing while she was wearing an outfit that looked like she was dressed by Ice Spice. Ice Spice thought that Latto was biting her, so she wrote a song called Think You the S Word, You're Not, You're Just the Fart. Latto retaliated by having a poo emoji cake for her birthday. And that's about all the digging I will do on that beef. But yeah, she had drama with Latto. Then she had drama with Nicki Minaj because allegedly Ice Spice's old friend exposed text messages between her and Ice, where Ice Spice was basically saying that Nicki Minaj was trying to rip her off and take too much profit off the collaboration songs that they had together, and complaining that she brought Nicki the songs, so Nicki didn't deserve to take the percentage that she was asking for. And this is coming from a third party, so it could all be cap, but it was enough to make the Barbs, Nicki Minaj's fans, completely turn on Ice Spice. And now Ice is doing cheap interpolations of old Nicki records. I mean, it just sounds and looks desperate and lacks any artistic integrity or innovation. She also created this whole, publicity stunt. It could be real, it could be fake, but apparently she might be dating Central Cee, might be a lie. But now she's caught up in this whole drama with Central Cee's ex-girlfriend, who he was apparently cheating on with Ice Spice at the time. And it seems like her whole album rollout has been centered around this drama with this ex-girlfriend. She's posting TikToks mocking her. The ex-girlfriend is doing hour-long rants on Instagram. Everywhere Ice Spice goes, Central Cee's attached to her hip. It looks like Ice Spice is Kanye West and Central Cee is Kanye's new wife there, Bianca Sensory. She always has her face covered. We've never heard her speak. She kind of just follows Kanye around, and that's what Central Cee is kind of doing right now. I haven't heard him drop a banger since he started dating Ice Spice. And I mean, more power to him. If I was dating Ice Spice, I probably wouldn't be doing much either besides, being a munch and all that. But yeah, that's another thing, right? I mean, back when she first came out, she was coming up with all this interesting slang like munch or going coo. Now she's just known for dropping an insane amount of poop bars. Yeah, between the lack of innovation within her music, the drama she's been a part of with other female rappers, and the relationship and scandal and the, Instagram influencer level drama that she's a part of with Central Cee and his ex-girlfriend, I mean, all of these things are just leading you steps closer to not being considered as a serious artist. I think Ice Spice is more concerned with being an influencer than a real artist, and even if that's the case, having all these useless beefs and walking around with Central Cee like he's your puppy on a leash isn't going to help you get money or build your brand. There's also been rumors of you being on Ozempic. I mean, again, not great for public perception. But let's keep it on the music. I mean, again, I think for all these reasons and more, Ice Spice's album is about to flop. She already released 4 out of the 10 tracks before the album came out. And I mean, unless you're delivering a My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or an absolute classic album, in the streaming era, you have no business making such a short album. If I'm getting 10 tracks from you and you're one of the biggest female rappers in the game, I shouldn't see a song with the title Fat Butt anywhere near a 10-track album track list. You better be giving me Beethoven-level symphonies if you're only going to give me 10 tracks and expect that it's going to be a success. You want to know the last massive hip-hop album that was 10 tracks? It was Yeezus. And you want to know the one before that? It was Illmatic by Nas. So making your album 10 songs is a very bold move. But don't get me wrong, 10 fat butts is enough. I don't need more than 10 fat butt records. So maybe she did us all a favor by making this album only 10 tracks because it was, I'm not gonna lie, a pretty painful listen. Now again, Ice Spice, I love you. But we gotta keep it objective here, and there's nothing more objective than actually reading the lyrics and dissecting them for what they are. So let's dive into a couple of the best bars off of this project. So first on the song Papa, we got the bars, and he beat up the cat, call up PETA. Genius wordplay right there. Then we got some more poop bars where she said, standing on S-word like a floor mat. In my last video, you guys asked me why I say S-word and B-word. Well, YouTube would take down this video if I started cussing. So we're going to keep it PG here, all right? Now, this bar is actually kind of hard. She said, tell her drop a pin, but we ain't bowling. Make them women sick, I got motion. And she did her best Nicki Minaj impression where she rapped the bars, I ain't got no effing kids, I got hella sons. On that same record, it's actually called Plenty Sun, she wrote, put that stuff on, think he fly, he think he Peter Pan. Now, speaking of Peter Pan and being a kid, there's a very deranged record on this album, given the whole, Drake, Kendrick Lamar beef, where Kendrick is calling Drake a PDF file, the whole climate of the culture right now with Diddy, with Drake, with all that weird minor stuff. Ice Spice dropped one of the most tone-deaf records of all time, where she's rapping about a guy who wants to get with her, but thinks she's underage, and she confirms to him that she isn't. I mean, I guess she's just kind of showing you that, she does the right thing here. She stays out of trouble. But when you finally decide to drop a record with an actual, I guess you could call it a concept behind it, it's weird that you would pick a storyline like that. I don't know. Didn't sit well with me. I like this bar too. She said, let him beat it from the back and he eat it up like Pac-Man. Genius. Just genius wordplay. And going back to what we were saying beforehand on how Ice Spice got her biggest hits from collaborating with other female artists, it was crazy to me seeing this track list that there was not one collaboration with another female. Like, her best records were easily with PinkPantheress and Nicki Minaj. And I mean, we're not in 2011 here. Like, back when Nicki Minaj was in her prime, like, there was not one other female rapper on the scene. So she really had no competition and no one to collaborate with, really. Ice Spice, on the other hand, has a lot to choose from. Like, I think she went on tour with Doja Cat. Like, how come we didn't see a Doja Cat collaboration here? Also, her more raw, authentic counterpart or peer, whatever you want to call her, Sexxy Redd. Like, I think their two styles would mesh well together. I think this is the first time I've ever actually wanted to see Sexxy Redd make an appearance on someone else's album. But yeah, I would have been here for it. I think that would have been a cool collaboration. Or Glorilla or any New York artist. Instead, we got phoned in verses from Central Cee, Gunna, and Travis Scott. Like, extremely underwhelming. We got the same beats over and over again. A horrible interpolation of Gimme the Light by Sean Paul. That was one of the singles and the first sign that this album was about to flop. And these songs just sound formulaic. A lot of this stuff, this whole situation really, Ice Spice's whole rise and where she's at now, it reminds me a lot of the situation Cardi B was in. And I think the reason we haven't seen a second Cardi B album is because she was trying to avoid this exact situation where public perception of her wasn't what it once was, and as a result, her project flops. Because once your project flops, like if this Ice Spice album does end up flopping, it puts her at a big disadvantage commercially. Label will invest way less into her, and especially with the type of artist that Ice Spice is, public perception is everything. The music takes a backseat to popularity, looks, TikTok sound bites, memorable moments, and other materialistic stuff. So when you create this perception that you're like larger than life, she was doing Super Bowl commercials, performing at stadiums with Taylor Swift, doing multiple collabs with Nicki Minaj. Once you've done all that and then your album comes out and does 20K in the first week, it puts you in a different type of light, and obviously, again, definitely does not incentivize your label to continue pushing and investing in you the same way they once were. Yeah, it was a very similar situation with Cardi B. I mean, she dropped her album Invasion of Privacy in 2018. We haven't heard an album from her since. It's been 6 years since then. I believe every record off of that album is platinum right now, which is like a historic thing. There's only a few albums in history to ever accomplish that. And even with that success, she wasn't able to follow up that massive album with something nearly on the same level. And it's very similar to Ice Spice because both of them came in the game with somewhat of a new sound, a new style. They were kind of like a breath of fresh air, especially Cardi B, because again, Nicki Minaj had no competition for the first like 7 years of her career. Then Cardi B came around and actually gave her a run for her money somewhat. And then her and Nicki kind of got in this back and forth, and Cardi was actually kind of painted as the good guy. But the year after her first album, she kept dropping formulaic hits. Nothing was sticking. She was more focused on that beef with Nicki than actually following up her first album with something that was even better. And as a result, she was stuck in this sort of box almost where she kept putting out singles. All of them sounded formulaic and forced, so none of them truly hit. And because of her decreasing lack of chart presence, it made it harder and harder for Cardi B to release that second album because she knew that it wouldn't follow up to the success of her first one. And if she's going platinum with every song on her first album, but the second one fails to have, even 2 or 3 platinum records, the fans are going to ultimately think that you've fallen off. Again, this isn't like Nas we're talking about here, who could drop, multiple amazing projects. Each of them could sell like 10, 20K and we'll be like, he's in his second prime right now. This is Cardi B. Like, she's known for hits. We expect hits from her. Same thing with Ice Spice. So if you're not coming with the hits, if your album's flopping, if your album rollout is more centered around drama between your boyfriend's ex-girlfriend and your monthly listeners have decreased more than 50% in less than a year, it's safe to say not only are you this larger than life figure at this point, but you've also stripped yourself of that, hip-hop sweetheart image by getting into all these random beefs. And where I'd suggest Ice Spice should take notes from is from rappers like Sexxy Redd or Glorilla. Glorilla. Both these rappers came in the game being themselves unapologetically and never tried to portray this, larger than life or clean cut image. And as a result, their music sounds a lot more organic. It doesn't sound like the label is doing their best to try to concoct a hit for rappers like Sexxy Redd or Glorilla. It sounds like they just get in the booth and they spit what feels good to them. And as a result, they're able to diversify their sound, because when you have the label's hand in the creative process of what you're doing, or even if you go in the booth and like the first thing in your head is, how high is this song gonna chart? Like you're trying to chase that hit, it's never gonna come. It's kind of like with me, right? Like anytime I make a video about Kendrick Lamar or Drake or their beef or the Not Like Us record, those videos do way better than anything else. But I'm trying to create and give my opinion on and inform you guys on stuff that I actually enjoy. There's only so many Kendrick Lamar beef videos I can make. And it's the same thing with Ice Spice and Cardi B. There's only so many riot-produced drill bangers you can make. There's only so many times Cardi B can use that same flow that she used on her 2018 #1 hit. I like that. All of Sexxy Redd and Glorilla's hit records sound like different records. Each one of them sounds different. They sound like a mix of like a 3 6 Mafia, Lil Jon, and like Chief Keef. If they all had a baby, like that's what Sexxy Redd or Glorilla would sound like. And it's more fun, it's more exciting. Like these artists, Glorilla and Sexxy Redd, they're not worried about how much their album is going to sell in the first week. They're not waiting years in between when they drop projects. They drop frequently. It sounds like they're having fun with it. They don't follow a copy-paste formula. Everything kind of sounds a little different and definitely unique. And to put it this way, like Cardi B was the biggest rapper in 2018. Massive feature artist too. Like when she hopped on Your Record, it was like pretty much guaranteed to be a hit back in 2018. And now fast forward to 2023, 2024, she's constantly threatening that she's not going to release her album. She might retire from music. And her last big hit was actually with Glorilla, who was a much smaller artist than her when they put out this record. And as big of a budget as Cardi B or Ice Spice's label probably gives them to create these albums and market them and do these crazy music videos and all that, I think Sexxy Redd or Glorilla going into the booth with an iPhone microphone, recording everything off the top of their head, I think projects like that would, in the long run, sell a lot more than those Cardi B and Ice Spice manufactured, propped up, formulaic projects. And again, it's not to hate. I actually like Cardi B's first album a lot, and I was kind of disappointed that she didn't put out anything else after that. I felt like it was kind of a waste of potential, and I wouldn't say I listen to Ice Spice's music, but I was definitely interested in what she was going to do with this album. I mean, again, she had massive buzz. Her first mixtape went gold. She set herself up to have a massive first album. And you could say, oh, but like album sales today don't matter because we're in the streaming era and people don't really listen to albums. But when an album or a project is truly good, it's going to sell no matter what. I mean, look at Gunna. He's a prime example of this. Everyone thought that he, quote unquote, snitched on his mentor, Young Thug. He was like one of the most hated rappers in the game by all of his rapper friends and by, the fans at first when he first came out of jail. But he's been consistently dropping hit after hit. And as a result, he's consistently selling high numbers with every album he releases. I think his album actually sold more than Young Thug's did, the one that Thug released when he was in jail. So it just shows you, only real music is going to last. And, you could program the algorithm on TikTok or on Instagram to hit your numbers of likes and shares that you want. But when it comes to people pressing play on your actual album, the success of that can't be chalked up to formulas and gimmicks or the same song over and over again. You gotta be unique. So for all these reasons and more, that's why I think Ice Spice will flop with this album and potentially could be the demise of her massive run at the top of the female rap food chain. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you like this video, hit it with a little subscription, hit it with a like. Comment on what you want to see next and who you think the biggest rapper right now is in the game. Biggest female rapper as well. Best one would definitely be Rhapsody. If you haven't heard her album that she released in 2024 and this year, definitely go check that out. Phenomenal project. And let me know what you think about that album as well in the comments. And I will catch you guys in the next one.